Respected, before you click away, hear me carefully because this message may change the way you look at love forever. Sometimes in life, two souls walk separate roads, face different storms, make painful mistakes, and still somehow find their way back to each other. Why? Because when two people are truly meant to be together, life begins to whisper signs so powerful that even distance, silence, and heartbreak cannot erase them. You know, one thing I've learned about life is this. People spend too much time trying to force what was never meant for them, while ignoring what keeps finding its way back into their lives. See, love ain't always loud. Real connection doesn't always arrive with fireworks and perfect timing. Sometimes it comes disguised as confusion. Sometimes it arrives through pain. Sometimes it shows up after life humbles you. There are people who enter your life for a season, and then there are people who feel like home no matter how far you go. You can meet 1,000 deep people and still feel empty inside. But then one person walks into your life and suddenly the world feels different. Not easier, not perfect, but different. Like something inside you finally exhales. And today we're going to talk about something real. We're going to talk about what happens when two people are genuinely meant to be together. Not fantasy, not movie love, not social media relationships where everything looks perfect for 30 seconds. I'm talking about real love, the kind that survives misunderstandings, the kind that teaches you lessons, the kind that changes who you are. Because when two people are truly meant to be together, there are certain things that always happen. You can run from them, deny them, ignore them, but life has a funny way of revealing what's real. And the first thing that always happens is this. Life keeps bringing them back together. Now let me explain something to you. Have you ever tried to forget someone, but somehow their memory just went away? El diente leave? You move to a different place, change your habits, meet new people, try your best to distract yourself, but somehow life keeps crossing your paths again. Maybe it's through mutual friends. Maybe it's through timing that feels impossible to explain. Maybe years go by and somehow, unexpectedly, there they are again. And when you see them, something inside you wakes up. See, when two people are meant to be together, life has a strange way of reconnecting them. Now, don't misunderstand me. That doesn't mean every breakup is destiny. Sometimes people leave because they're supposed to. Sometimes people walk away because the lesson is ended. But when two souls are truly aligned, separation becomes temporary, not permanent. Life keeps creating moments. You ever notice that? You tell yourself, I'm done, I'm moving on. Then suddenly you hear their favorite song. You drive past a place that reminds you of them. You hear somebody say something they used to say. And then meow, out of nowhere they call or they text. Or life places you in the same room again. And people call it coincidence. But sometimes coincidence ain't coincidence. Sometimes life is trying to finish a sentence that both people walked away from too early. I remember hearing a story about a man who met a woman in his 20s. They had chemistry, connection, everything felt right, but timing was wrong. He was immature, chasing money, success, pride. She was healing from her own pain. And because neither one was ready, life pulled them apart. Years passed. He dated other women. She moved on, built a career, learned independence. But something strange kept happening. Every relationship they entered felt incomplete. Nobody quite measured up. Not because they were obsessed. Not because they refused to move on, but because somewhere deep inside there was unfinished growth. One day, nearly 10 years later, they accidentally met again at a grocery store. And you know what was different? Life had changed them. Pain had matured them. Heartbreak had softened them. Time had taught them. The same people who couldn't make it work years ago finally had the wisdom to love each other correctly. Now, hear me carefully. Sometimes the reason things fall apart is because both people still have to grow to do. See, people think love alone is enough. Love matters, but maturity matters too. Timing matters. Healing matters. Growth matters. Because the wrong version of you can destroy the right relationship. And some people lose somebody special, not because the connection wasn't real, but because they weren't ready to carry something real. But if it's truly meant, life often creates another chance. Not always, but often. Because what belongs to your soul has a way of teaching patience. Now, here's something else that happens when two people are meant to be together. The connection challenges both people to grow. Let me tell you something about meaning. Faux relationships. They will expose you. Oh, yes. Real love will reveal parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. It'll reveal your fears, your insecurities, your wounds, your ego. See, most people think love is about comfort. But real connection? Sometimes it makes you uncomfortable before it makes you better. Because the right person won't just tell you what you want to hear. The right person pushes you toward becoming who you're supposed to be. Maybe they challenge your bad habits. Maybe they force you to face emotional wounds you've ignored for years. Maybe they teach you patience when all you know is anger. Maybe they teach you vulnerability when all you know is hiding. And that's uncomfortable. Growth always is. But when two people are meant to be together, something beautiful happens. They become mirrors for each other. Not perfect mirrors, but honest ones. The relationship starts exposing everything fake. The pretending stops. The masks begin falling away. Because eventually real love asks one question: can you show me who you really are? Not your highlight reel. Not your perfect image. Not the version of yourself you show strangers. The real you. The insecure you. The tired you. The scared you. And if two people are truly meant to be together, they don't run from truth forever. Eventually, they begin growing together. And maybe right now, somebody watching this feels confused. Maybe you're wondering whether someone in your life is truly meant for you. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe distance has made you doubt. Maybe silence has made you overthink. But hear me carefully. Sometimes silence is not the end of the story. Sometimes confusion is part of the lesson. Sometimes distance is preparing both people for a stronger reunion. But you've got to stop chasing what's forced. Stop begging for what doesn't choose you. Stop trying to control every outcome. Because what is truly meant for your life often arrives with the peace, growth, and undeniable lessons. And as we continue, I'm going to share the second thing that always happens when two people are truly meant to be together, and trust me, this one changes everything. Now let me tell you about the second thing that always happens when two people are truly meant to be together. No matter how hard life gets, they feel an emotional pull toward each other that never completely disappears. Now, listen to me carefully, because this right here confuses a lot of people. I'm not talking about obsession. I'm not talking about unhealthy attachment. I'm not talking about toxic cycles where somebody keeps hurting you and calling it love. That ain't what I mean. I'm talking about something deeper, something quieter, something that survives even after anger fades. See, when two people are truly connected, there's this strange emotional thread between them. You can't always explain it, but you feel it. You ever had somebody cross your mind for absolute, telling no reason? You're busy, focused, living your life, and suddenly out of nowhere you think about them. Not because you were trying to, not because you're lonely, but because somehow, some way, their presence still exists inside your emotional world. And before some people misunderstand me, let me say this clearly. Missing someone doesn't always mean they're meant for you. But when a connection is real, meaningful, and built on something deeper than attraction, the emotional impact stays. Because certain people don't just enter your life, they leave fingerprints on your spirit. I remember hearing about a woman who spent years trying to forget somebody she once loved deeply. They didn't separate because they stopped caring. They separated because life got complicated. Miscommunication, pressure, fear. And like many people, both of them thought time would erase everything. But time didn't erase it. Time revealed it. Years passed and she noticed something unusual. Every major moment in life somehow reminded her of him. When she got promoted, she wanted to call him. When she struggled, she remembered how safe she once felt around him. When she laughed hard at something funny, she instinctively thought, he would have loved this. Now hear me carefully. That doesn't mean she stopped living. It doesn't mean she stayed stuck. But it meant something real had happened. And eventually, after years of growth, life crossed their paths again. But this time, something had changed. Both people had changed. They stopped trying to win arguments. Stopped protecting their pride. Stopped pretending they didn't care. Because sometimes distance teaches you what closeness couldn't. See, when somebody meaningful leaves your life, you learn the difference between chemistry and connection. Chemistry is exciting. Connection is rare. Chemistry can happen with many people, but deep emotional connection, that only happens a few times in life. That's why some people spend years chasing excitement but still feel empty inside. Because excitement fades, looks change, circumstances shift, but emotional safety, emotional understanding, emotional peace, that stuff matters. You know what most people get wrong about relationships? They think love is about finding somebody perfect. Love is about finding somebody whose imperfections still feel worth understanding. Somebody whose flaws don't scare you away. Somebody you still respect during difficult seasons. Because real relationships ain't tested when life feels easy. Anybody can love somebody when everything's perfect. The real question is, what happens when life gets heavy? What happens when stress enters the room? What happens when mistakes happen? What happens when disappointment arrives? Because if two people are truly meant to be together, conflict doesn't destroy the connection. It reveals what needs healing. Now, don't get me wrong. Every meaningful regarding. Relationships face storms, arguments happen, misunderstandings happen, moments of distance happen. But there's something unique about two people who are meant to be together. Even when they hurt each other, something inside them still wants peace more than pride. You know why? Because real connection makes winning arguments feel less important than protecting love. And that takes maturity. Oh, yes, maturity changes everything. You know what destroys a lot of relationships? Ego. Pride, the need to always be right. People lose good people because they care more about being correct than being connected. They say things they can't take back. They let anger make permanent decisions. They stop communicating. And then years later, they sit there wondering why life feels lonely. See, wisdom teaches you something powerful. Not every disagreement deserves destruction. Not every misunderstanding deserves goodbye. Sometimes what people need is patience, grace, honest conversation, and healing. Because when two people are meant to be together, life keeps teaching them the same lesson until both people finally understand it. That's why some connections feel impossible to forget. The lesson ain't finished. The growth ain't complete. The story still has chapters left. Now, let me be real with you for a moment. Somebody watching this right now may still be holding on to somebody who walked away. And maybe you're asking yourself, should I wait? Should I hold on? Are we meant to be? And I want you to hear this carefully. Never let the idea of destiny become an excuse for disrespect. Never confuse inconsistency with connection. Never mistake mixed signals for love. If somebody repeatedly hurts you, lies to you, manipulates you, or destroys your peace, don't romanticize pain and call it fate. Because what is truly meant for you will challenge you, yes, but it will not continuously break you. Real connection pushes growth, not destruction. Peace, not chaos. Understanding, not confusion every single day. And sometimes when people are meant to be together, separation becomes a classroom. Life starts teaching both people lessons separately. One learns emotional maturity. The other learns vulnerability. One learns patience. The other learns accountability. And suddenly, after enough growth, they meet again as completely different versions of themselves. Not because fate magically fixed everything, but because both people finally became emotionally ready for what they once almost destroyed. And let me tell you something powerful. Sometimes the person you're praying for ain't ready yet. And sometimes, neither are you. That truth hurts. But growth requires honesty. You cannot force timing. You cannot rush healing. You cannot pressure love into existence. You can only become better, stronger, wiser, more emotionally healthy. Because healthy love requires healthy people. And when the timing finally aligns, things begin making sense in ways you never expected. But there's a third thing that always happens when two people are truly meant to be together. And this one right here separates temporary connections from life-changing ones completely. Now let me tell you about the third thing that always happens when two people are truly meant to be together. They somehow keep finding their way back to honesty. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is where most relationships either rise or fall. Because anybody can fake a connection in the beginning. Anybody can say sweet things when emotions are high. Anybody can act perfect for a little while. But time tells the truth. Pressure tells the truth. Distance tells the truth. Hardship tells the truth. You see, when two people are truly meant to be together, pretending eventually becomes exhausting. The masks fall off. The game stops working. And life starts demanding something deeper. Honesty. Not surface level honor. Not the kind where somebody says, I'm fine when they're breaking inside. I'm talking about real honesty. The kind that says, I'm scared. I made mistakes. I pushed you away because I didn't know how to love properly. I was hurt before and I brought those wounds into this relationship. See, people think vulnerability makes them weak. Vulnerability reveals strength because it takes courage to tell somebody the truth about who you are. And when two people are meant to be together, something powerful starts happening. They stop trying to impress each other and start trying to understand each other. Now hear me carefully. Understanding changes everything. Because love without understanding eventually turns into frustration. You ever notice how many couples stop listening? They hear words, but they stop hearing hearts. One person says, I need reassurance. The other hears criticism. One person says, I feel disconnected. The other hears blame. One person says, I'm hurting. The other hears weakness. And suddenly two people who care deeply begin drifting apart, not because love disappeared, but because communication broke down. Now I remember hearing about a couple who almost lost everything. They loved each other deeply, but every disagreement turned into a battlefield. Nobody wanted to apologize. Nobody wanted to admit fault. Both people carried pride like armor. And over time, the relationship grew colder. You know what finally changed things? One difficult conversation. Not a perfect conversation. Not some movie moment where everything magically got fixed. Just honesty. The man finally admitted something he had hidden for years. He said, I keep acting distant because I'm afraid if you see the real me, you'll leave. And the woman broke down crying because she had spent years believing she wasn't enough. Now think about that for a second. Two people hurting silently, standing only inches apart, but emotional. Lies separated by fear, and that happens more than people realize. See, fear destroys a lot of good relationships. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of vulnerability, fear of being disappointed. So people build walls. And the problem with walls is this: they don't just keep pain out, they keep love out too. That's why when two people are meant to be together, life often forces them into moments where truth becomes unavoidable. Maybe they lose each other temporarily. Maybe silence teaches them what communication failed to. Maybe pain humbles them. But eventually, if the connection is real and both people are growing, honesty enters the room. And honesty changes everything. Because real love cannot survive lies forever. Real love cannot breathe inside constant pretending. Eventually, somebody has to say, this is who I am. This is what hurt me. This is what I need. This is where I failed. And that takes courage. You know something powerful I've learned? Aren't about relationships. Sometimes people don't need perfection. They just need truth. Because perfection creates pressure. Truth creates connection. Nobody trusts perfection. But honesty? Honesty makes people feel safe. And emotional safety is one of the biggest signs that two people are meant to grow together. You know what emotional safety feels like? It feels like peace. It feels like being accepted without pretending. It feels like somebody seeing your flaws and still choosing to understand you. Not excuse bad behavior, not tolerate disrespect, but understand your humanity. That's rare because the world teaches people to wear masks, to hide pain, to act tough, to pretend everything's okay. But meaningful relationships teach the opposite. They teach surrender. They teach trust. They teach emotional courage. Now, somebody watching this may be asking, but what if we stopped talking? What if everything fell apart? What if too much damage happened? Listen carefully. Sometimes relationships break because people stop communicating. But sometimes they break because people weren't emotionally ready yet. There's a difference. And if two people are truly meant to be together, growth has a strange way of bringing clarity. The version of you that once handled things poorly begins changing. You start seeing your mistakes differently. You stop blaming everything on the other person. You become accountable. You become wiser. And suddenly you realize something painful but important. Sometimes love wasn't missing. Maturity was. Oh, that one hurts. But it's true. Sometimes two people love each other deeply and still fail because they don't yet know how to communicate, trust, forgive, or heal. And life has a way of teaching those lessons. Sometimes through heartbreak. Sometimes through loneliness. Sometimes through regret. Because regret is a powerful teacher. There are people walking around right now wishing they had communicated better, wishing they had apologized sooner, wishing they had shown more appreciation, wishing they had been emotionally honest instead of emotionally unavailable. And if you're listening to me right now, I want you to think about something. Who in your life deserves honesty from you? What conversation have you been avoiding? What truth are you afraid to say? Because healing begins where honesty begins. And when two people are truly meant to be together, honesty eventually becomes stronger than fear. But now we're about to talk about the fourth thing that always happens when two people are truly meant to be together. And this one right here, this one changes the whole meaning of love.